It was the last time Elizabeth saw Catherine. When she moved to Sudeley to have the baby, Elizabeth wrote to her, wishing her luck. But Catherine died shortly after the birth of her child, and she was buried here at Sudeley. In her final delirium, all her fears and jealousies about Seymour's behaviour had revived, and with very good reason, because Seymour soon renewed his suit to marry Elizabeth, and this time he had the powerful backing of Cat Ashley. Elizabeth herself, too, was enthusiastic, but she'd the good sense to say firmly that she wouldn't consider the marriage without the backing of the council. Seymour, for his part, hot-headed and impetuous as usual, was too impatient to wait.
Thomas was becoming more and more keen to attain some personal power and to further his career, and one way of doing this was to get Edward, the king, the young king, completely on his side. And I think he decided that he was going to actually abduct the king, and as he lived in the neighbouring apartment, it was very easy for him to have conversations and meetings with the young king. And how it happened, I don't think is really clear, but we do know that he was found in the king's apartment with a sword in his hand. The spaniel, one of the many spaniels I think that the young king had, started to bark, and I suppose in desperation Thomas ran it through with his sword, and there was a great kerfuffle and noise, and people burst in and Thomas was arrested.
Seymour was charged with treason. His relationship with Elizabeth made her a suspect too. A team of interrogators descended on Hatfield to discover whether she'd been plotting with him. Her closest confidant, Cat Ashley, was arrested and taken to the Tower. Under threat of torture, she described the scandalous events of the previous summer. Her evidence was now used word for word against Elizabeth.
Another time at Hanworth, he romped with her in the garden. Romped. And cut her gown, being black cloth, into 100 pieces. And when I came and chid Lady Elizabeth, she assured me she could not strive withal, for the Queen held her, while the Lord Admiral cut the dress. The Queen, suspecting the often access of the Admiral to the Lady Elizabeth, came suddenly upon them, where they were all alone, he having her in his arms.
Despite the evidence, Elizabeth refused to admit any wrongdoing. Then a rumour began that she was pregnant by Seymour. She complained bitterly to Somerset.
Master Tyrwhitt and others have told me that there goeth rumours abroad that I am in the Tower, and with child by my Lord Admiral. These are shameful slanders. I shall most heartily desire, your lordship, that I may come to the court, that I may show myself as I am.
Tyrwhitt told Somerset he was sure she was guilty, but he could prove nothing. Elizabeth had survived the crisis. But Seymour's guilt was clear. In March 1549, Somerset signed his brother's death warrant, and Seymour was beheaded on Tower Hill. Elizabeth's brush with Thomas Seymour marked a turning point in her young life. It was a brutal initiation into the world of adult politics and adult sexuality. She'd learned the hard way that a sexual relationship, even a close friendship, might mean danger, perhaps death. She knew now that when a man approached her, he got his eyes on the throne as much as on her. From this point onwards, she trusted almost nobody. She kept her own counsel, and she concealed her true thoughts. It was her defence against a hostile world. Elizabeth was left alone in the peaceful solitude of Hatfield. Here she continued her studies. She also indulged a passion for riding and hunting. The clean air and exercise were a welcome antidote to the headaches and sickness that had plagued her during the investigation and would recur throughout her life during moments of stress. At about this time, Elizabeth's French tutor, John Belmain, gave her as a present his translation of St. Basil's Epistle to St. Gregory on the virtues of the single life. The saint's argument was that marriage distracted the soul from the worship of God. Bearing in mind her recent experiences with Thomas Seymour, Elizabeth was well aware of the practical political advantages of celibacy too. It was the same with the rest of the saint's arguments about the need for temperance and sobriety of dress. Elizabeth created a sensation at court by turning up with her hair straight, her face unmade up, and virtually no jewellery. She was rehabilitating herself after the disaster of the Seymour affair by playing the Quaker Maid. There was more to it than just image. Elizabeth was caught up in the new Protestant mood in England. The crosses and candles of the Catholic faith were being stripped from altars everywhere. The new faith had the enthusiastic backing of Elizabeth's brother, the young King Edward. But by 1553, the 15-year-old king was dying of tuberculosis. He was desperate to stop the religious reforms being undone by his Catholic sister Mary, who would succeed under the terms of their father's will. So he excluded her from the succession, because she was a bastard. But if Mary was a bastard, so too was Elizabeth. Instead, Edward chose a Protestant cousin to succeed him, the 15-year-old Lady Jane Grey. Anxiously, Elizabeth waited with her armed followers at Hatfield to see what would happen next.